Former Vice President Mike Pence is absolutely trashing Trump in the latest viral attack, and we're going to look at it, but I do feel like I need to do a certain little bit of a disclaimer here. Mike Pence is not the hero here. Mike Pence is not brave. He's not principled. He's not suddenly been redeemed for all of his horrible and disgusting actions during Donald Trump's first term. But every once in a while, Pence does say something so blatantly obvious that it puts Trump's madness in sharp relief. And that's why we are going to look at this string of clips that's going viral. Pence is doing what almost no one in the Republican Party is willing to do. Say basic, verifiable, non-controversial truths about Trump. Truths that make Trump look like a lunatic. Let me give you the first example here, and then we'll talk about it.
Kristen, I've never been a fan of American presidents criticizing America on foreign soil. And to have the president in Saudi Arabia questioning America's global war on terror and describing it as nation building and interventionist, I thought was a disservice to generations of Americans who wore the uniform, who took the fight to our enemy, in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Particularly giving that speech in Saudi Arabia, where 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers hailed from, and not including Osama bin Laden, I thought was unfortunate.
You know, the ick factor with Pence is absolutely unmissable. I mean, truly just disgusting. And at the same time, he's not wrong about a lot of this stuff. And the topic of tariffs came up, which I found very interesting. Now Mike Pence is against the blanket tariffs of Trump. Great. He's right about that. But Pence stood aside when Trump's first term tariffs did the exact same thing. And Pence sort of suggests, well, I was against them then, but I wasn't the president, so I just kind of stood aside. But I told Trump privately about it.
Let me ask you about the tariffs from the first term. They added some $80 billion in higher prices for Americans, increased prices on things like tires and washing machines. Why didn't you say they're a tax during the first administration?
Well, I probably did in the hallways, but the president gets to make the decision.
You told President Trump that directly?
Well, sure.
How did he respond?
Look, when you're vice president of the United States, my view was always this. I'd favor the president with the full range of my opinion in private. And then when he made the decision, my job was to support his decision, absent some higher calling or higher obligation that one has. And I fully supported his approach on tariffs, but I was never confused about who pays tariffs.
This is pathetic. It's sort of a pathetic honesty. Pence is saying, I knew Trump was lying to the American people about tariffs during the first term. He knew that Americans were paying the price. Pence did. And his big act of bravery was whispering concerns to Trump in the hallway. And this is a perfect example of GOP cowardice. Admit Trump was wrong years later, and only when it is safe. Now, are my expectations of Mike Pence too high? Is it unreasonable to think that a vice president disagreeing with the president can't possibly do anything or say anything publicly? Maybe. But this new retrospective concern about Trump's policies, I'm finding it pretty pathetic, if I'm completely honest with you. Pence kept talking about the tariffs, and he acknowledges, yeah, listen, Trump's tariff plan is the biggest peacetime tax hike on the American people in the history of this country. This happens to be true.
President Trump says foreign countries pay for the tariffs. He says they're going to make the country rich. And yet you have said, you've called them the Trump tariff tax. Why?
Well, first off, the initial reciprocal tariffs that he unveiled would be the largest peacetime tax hike on the American people in the history of this country.
Oh, boy.
As I said, I'm glad he's paused that. And as we're seated here, I understand the president is going to make an offer to 150 countries. But look, he and I talked many times about trade. Here in Indiana, we're one of the leading exporting states in the country. What we make here, what we grow and raise here, we sell around the world. I've always believed that trade means jobs, but I came to respect President Trump's willingness to use the threat of tariffs to negotiate, as we did with the new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. We renegotiated South Korea. We were well down the road of a trade agreement with Japan, with the UK, with the EU during our time. But there's no question in this administration that he is surrounded, it appears to me, with people that nurture his more protectionist instincts. And as the president has said to me many times, he has a sense that other countries pay tariffs.
He has a sense. I like that.
When the reality is, when Americans buy goods overseas, the company that imports those goods in this country pays the tariff, and more often than not, passes that along in higher prices to consumers.
All right, so listen, Mike Pence is right. This is how tariffs work. The tariff war punishes Americans more than it punishes anybody else. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods. Consumers pay the tariffs through higher prices. Since the tariffs are imposed by the federal government run by Trump, and they are effectively taxes, Trump is imposing new taxes on the American people. That's all true, okay? When Trump did it on a smaller scale during his first term, Pence says he would whisper to Trump in the hallway about it. I get it, okay? The chain of command. But it's not exactly a profile in courage now. I'm struggling to see this as a profile in courage. The topic of the plane gift from Qatar came up. And all of a sudden, despite Trump's actions during his first term, getting all sorts of gifts that clearly violate the Emoluments Clause during the first term, during which Pence said nothing, now Mike Pence has discovered the Emoluments Clause to the Constitution.
A gift to the United States, they ought to take that $400 million and plow it into infrastructure on our military base.
So you're saying President Trump should turn down this plane?
I think he should. I think, look, others have observed there are profound issues, the potential for intelligence gathering, the need to ensure the president of the United States is safe and secure as he travels around the world. And of course, also there are very real constitutional issues. The Constitution prohibits public officials from accepting a present, in the words of the Constitution, a present from a foreign state. Now, they may have some basis through chain of title, through avoiding that, but I think it's just a bad idea, and my hope is the president will think better of it.
So listen, I mean, Mike Pence has discovered the Emoluments Clause to the Constitution, and it took a private jet from Qatar for him to say the quiet part out loud. Now, again, Pence is correct, but Trump has been violating the Emoluments Clause to the Constitution since day one of his first term. Foreign governments booking rooms at Trump's hotels so that they can cozy up to his administration. And Pence said nothing. But now he remembers what the Constitution says. What a gift from Mike Pence. And then finally, again, Pence is right about this stuff, but it's just like a little too little, a little too late. Pence rightly points out that Trump used to find the Qatari leadership to be anti-human rights and disturbing in all of their beliefs and actions. And all of a sudden, now that they're giving him a plane, he's not so concerned. But Mike Pence remembers.
Going to accept a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar to use as a temporary Air Force One. He said he'll eventually donate that to his presidential library. Do you think President Trump should accept a military aircraft from Qatar?
Well, I think first we've got to remember who Qatar is. We've got a military base there. I have members of our immediate family that have deployed to the region. But Qatar has a long history of playing both sides. They support Hamas. They supported al-Qaeda. Qatar has actually financed pro-Hamas protests on American campuses across the United States. And so the very idea that we would accept an Air Force One from Qatar, I think, is inconsistent with our security, with our intelligence needs, And my hope is the president reconsiders it.
Mike Pence is not the good guy, okay? He enabled Trump every step of the way. He defended Trump's Muslim majority country travel ban, helped stack the Supreme Court, turned a blind eye to nearly every single abuse of power. But now that it's over and Pence's political career seems to be totally cooked, he's willing to say some basic, minimal, entry-level truths. Two sides to this. Not a profile encouraged. I don't suddenly have a great respect for Mike Pence. But it is also true that this alone, these statements alone, the fact that Pence is willing to say, hey, you know, we used to believe this stuff and we used to say it, it does make Trump's behavior look unhinged, even accounting for the fact that it's the Republican Party. So let's not celebrate Pence. Let's pay attention to what it means when even Pence says this stuff. And it's a reminder of just how far this Republican Party has fallen. After researching, writing, refining, The Echo Machine, my book, is finally out. This is not just a book about how American politics got so broken. It's also about what's happening right now and what we can still do to stop things from getting worse. Trump's been back in power. The results have been even more catastrophic than many feared, with targeting of political opponents and gutting democratic institutions, laying the groundwork to even further consolidate power. But the thing is that none of this is inevitable. The same forces that brought us here can be countered if we understand how they work and what to do about them. And that's what The Echo Machine is all about. Some say that without corporate media backing, books like this can't succeed. I think we can prove them wrong. You can get The Echo Machine right now at davidpakman.com/echo on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, or by calling any local bookstore and asking them to order it. This book is more important than ever. If you care about what happens next, and I do, check out The Echo Machine today at davidpakman.com/echo.